Welcome back again, Rev Divers. Today we are talking to Sharon Smith, and Sharon is the practice manager at Virginia Beach Surgery. She's also heavily involved with Virginia MGMA, and we are really excited today that she allowed us to kind of steal some of her time because we want to talk about something that's going on all over the place right now, and that is delayed payments. And Sharon's kind enough to let us pick her brain. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited. We actually had an opportunity to speak to some of the members at MGMA Virginia about that impact across the state, and that 2/3 or more of the practices were saying they were receiving significant delays across huge payers, the big guns, right? Like United Healthcare, Anthem, Cigna. And when we say delays, though, I want to really kind of define that for our Rev Divers. So what does that mean? How long are you waiting on average for payments?
Well, so delays can come in many forms. Of course, the goal is to complete the claim resolution in a timely manner, and hopefully that's in the form of payment. But there can be delays for processing of that payment. There can also be seemingly unnecessary requests for records and full or partial claim denials and delays in communications. And all of those actions reflect in the claims resolution process. We did survey the Virginia providers this past week, and almost many of the providers report that they're taking over 2 months to receive payment. So in the 90 to 120 timeframe to receive payment. And we asked this on clean claims, not just all claims in general, because some claims are going to be a little bit more difficult to process or take a little bit more time and wouldn't be classified as clean. But approximately 11% reported for Anthem, 28% for United Healthcare, and 14% for other carriers other than those two. And while even those claims that are paid timely, they're seeing an uptick in retroactive denials and requests for refunds as well. So that just exacerbates the whole problem as for the claims resolution. And also regarding delays in payment, a Richmond Times Dispatch article recently had quoted Anthem as apologizing for delays in payments and for any inconveniences it causes. They're quick to cite COVID impacts for reasons for delays. But at our own practice, we've had an example of a claim that was filed 92 days after the date of service. But Anthem refused to pay even on appeal, even after letting them know. We also impacted by all COVID have staffing shortages, but they still, refused to pay. And so clearly they feel that they can use COVID as an excuse, but won't show the same mercy to the providers. These are the healthcare providers, the heroes that are actually on the front line of COVID. And I say, don't ask for grace if you're not willing to give it.
Wow, that's so true. What's interesting, I think we've all worked in healthcare for a long time, and we've seen ebbs and flows in payment trends. But this trend of delayed payments has really been prevalent since the public health emergency. We're really seeing and hearing a lot from organizations who are dealing with this. You mentioned being the practice manager for your organization. I'm curious to see from your perspective, what does it mean for you and your organization when payers don't make timely payments?
Well, when they don't make timely payments, it not only causes a delay in the revenue, and the revenue is what you need to cover your operating expenses, obviously, but it causes additional cost. You have to use resources. They're tasked with working AR reports. They're checking claim statuses. They're sometimes having to refile the claims or making phone calls. And those phone calls, we've all been on the phone with carriers. They can take forever to get through, an infinite hold. So much so you can put them on the speakerphone and have them on hold. And by the time they come on, you forgot who you even called because you continue to work. But untimely payment ultimately results in higher AR and increased costs for working those claims and decreased revenue And, it's the same, the value of the dollar. We always talk about patient collections, about how the longer it takes to collect it, the less the value of that dollar. Same can be said. That's whether the dollar is coming from the patient or the insurance carrier. The longer it takes, the less the value of that dollar is.
That's so true. And I think that for a lot of facilities, we talk frequently to revenue cycle executives and practice managers and practice administrators in larger facilities, but there are some that don't have that deep knowledge of what their timely payment terms even are in their contracts. And they need to not only understand those participation agreements and the language on the timely payment of those clean claims, but they also need to ensure that they're in alignment with those individual state regulations. And so I guess, what advice would you give for kind of closing those alignment gaps and understanding your right to timely payments? Because I don't know that all of our listeners really understand that they have rights there too.
Yes, they definitely need to make sure that they understand what their contractual obligations are, as well as the state regulations and what they say. That's very important. And but one thing that's a frustration is that there are so many caveats in the legislation that allow carriers to bypass that. It could be if they're self-funded payers or governmental payers, that they don't follow or are not regulated by the State Bureau of Insurance, that would seemingly enforce the legislation. And so you can have within one carrier, some of the policies will be subject to it. Some are self-funded groups and not subject to it. So it's very difficult with the millions of policies out there to understand which ones are caught by which legislation and contractually as well. So obviously, if there's a contractual, even in those instances, I think there might be some carve outs in the contracts. I really feel like there could be some room for improvement in this area. I really feel like that the carriers should be responsible or made responsible or mandated to provide the information on the claim. Every claim that they pay, there should be an indicator that states whether or not, with one of their little comments that they love to do, their remark codes, that they're subject to state regulations in which the provider practices medicines, or that they're not subject to those state regulations. And that would give the claims processor a clear, and the practice a clear understanding is, can they be held accountable? Because there's nothing like going to a fight and you don't have the right information. So, we want to know, are they exempt from that, or do they have to abide by those laws? And we can't know that because we don't know the types of policies that all these various claims fall under.
Sharon, when you said that, it activated something in me. Taya and I use the word activate rather than trigger.
That's good.
It's stolen. We took it from our Spill from the Hill correspondent, actually. So that we attribute that one to Claire Ernst.
Absolutely. But what that makes us think of is, making sure that we're keeping the insurance companies honest and that they're following state laws when it comes to claim adjudication and communication on clean claims. Each state has those regulations, and I'm in the state of Maryland. And our insurance commissioner, our state insurance commissioner, is super active. So, a piece of advice that I think we would want to share with our audience is stay in touch with your state's insurance commissioner and make sure that your insurance companies, the ones that you're participating with, who are supposed to follow certain guidelines when it comes to clean claims, that they're doing so. And when they're not, having that discussion with your insurance commissioner, because that insurance commissioner ultimately is the governing body for, the insurance companies within the states.
And let me add something on to that last topic. You talked about developing a relationship with the state insurance commissioner. And so every state's Bureau of Insurance is going to have their own methods for reporting. And when I was looking at the Fair Business Practice Act for Virginia, which is the one that would address this issue for the carriers in Virginia, they reference the reporting of situations where there's a trend, not a single claim or what have you, but And if we're not able to report violations, even if it's a single violation on a significant claim or something, if you figure that insurance, if they violate that process with me and I'm one provider and they have 5,000 providers in the States, if they just do it once with each provider, that's 5,000 violations. So if you can't track them for everybody else, only for yourself. And so they don't want to hear about it unless there's a trend, unless there's a lot of, pattern of it. And that's a lot to do, especially if you, again, you don't know if they're subject to those regulations. And then, so I even went on to the Bureau of Insurance website to see what the process would be to report. Are they accessible, available? You have to get a user login. And of course, then you have HIPAA issues and things like that. You're supposed to get patient consent. The whole process could be streamlined, and you should be able to report, so that if they're getting this from thousands of providers in the state, even though it's only one per provider, they see a pattern across providers. It doesn't have to be only just that with that one provider. And we could do it without the information for the patient. We could provide internal claim numbers from the carriers, and so that they can investigate directly or what have you. But because trying to get a hold of the patient to get authorization to release some of this information is going to be a little difficult too. But the whole process needs to be looked at, and people who make those rules have never sat in the process, and they need to understand what the process is so that they can make the rules according to what those processes are.
Totally agree. And when you think about the relationships and the communications that in the past that we were able to have with our provider relations reps, they used to come to the office, and we used to actually have reps assigned to us that we could communicate these trends with. Obviously with the way that the world has changed, we don't really have those relationships, those deep relationships that we used to have with our provider relations reps. So that can also kind of add to the challenge, I think, that we kind of deal with when we're identifying these trends, and who do we communicate them with? So that's something that I think if we can continue to, as much as we can, forge those relationships with our payers, educate them on the processes that our staff, are going through, that may also kind of help bridge that gap. And what we also see is, at least for our audience, they do their best with implementing, internal denials prevention programs, right? So we're trying to be proactive, right? However, I think that we're also kind of dealing with tactics that we're seeing coming from certain payers, right? Like saying that their system is down, the prior authorization mandates, backlogs, which are probably true because everyone is having, staffing shortages, but backlogs with claim adjudication, with processing, requests for medical records, all of these tactics, all of these factors, they are factoring into our delayed payments. Do you have any best practices that you would recommend to avoid organizations contributing to the delay of their payments?
Yes, actually I do. So first of all, those reps you talk about that we used to have conversations with in the office and quarterly, they would visit and see how things were going. Some of them still do exist. And so they've just been, their hands have been tied by the powers that be at the carriers. So still try to reach out. Some of them do exist, and some of them just have to know you won't go away till they resolve the issue. But also I've had a little bit of a success if I get a carrier on the phone and someone's extremely knowledgeable, which sometimes you wonder how many times you're given misinformation. But if you find somebody that's very, very knowledgeable, very helpful, and you let them know, say, I really appreciate your professionalism and your knowledge. You're so very helpful. Can I get a direct extension? If I ever have a persistent problem, would you mind if I give you a call direct? Because you seem to really know what's going on. And sometimes they'll let you do that, and they'll let you just call them, no, I wouldn't call them and say, hey, can you just tell me the claim status? But if you had something going on, that you wouldn't abuse that if you were to get it. But above all, always maintain your professionalism, because the moment you lose any professionalism, you lose credibility with that payer. It becomes an argument. And I always try to give them a reason to give me a yes, to give them a reason to help me, to a way to get through that process. I give them the reason to make it right for me, and the avenue, because they have rules they have to follow as well. So try to show how it fits within the rule where they can make that right for you. But also, as part of the financial management certificate program that I did through MGMA, in the payer contracting module, Doral Jacobson, I think was her name, tells us to identify the hassle factor. So definitely track these issues, but not just by mentally thinking, oh, I always get requests for them. I always get requests for them. Write down your internally for your own use claim numbers and or voucher numbers, however your system identifies them. Keep those things and notes handy. Have a scratch pad for each carrier that you're going to write down. This is a good example of when this became a huge problem. And because when you go to renegotiate a contract or to go before a payer because of the multiple problems that you're having, you want to be able to display give the information about the hassle with factor and doing business with them. And the first thing they're going to say is, show me examples. Because so many people will speak out of frustration. They'll say, oh, yeah, this pulled my hair out. Or, well, when you go back and dissect it, I get it all the time. Someone will come to me and say, this is going on. And when I say, okay, let's look at it, and then I can see errors on both sides, ours and theirs. So you got to make sure you've got your facts in a row, because again, that helps your credibility. You've got facts that'll back it up, and you admit to any areas for improvement that can be done on our side. If we've messed up or if we've missed the mark or need to improve in some areas, be transparent and say, hey, I understand we could do this a little better, but we'll strive to do this a little better. Can we get some improvement and direction from the carrier on the carrier side? So now I will tell you, I have a long history in this business, and early on, I was never afraid when we had Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE issues to go directly to congressional representatives. I was writing Congressman Owen Pickett and Senator John Warner, and getting all sorts of people involved, the governors of Virginia and of North Carolina, when applicable, when there was issues associated with a federal program. In fact, we had one Medicare Advantage program that was inappropriately applying an LCD from Medicare to all of our claims for one particular service. And we were writing to the Medicare Advantage carrier saying, this is inappropriately applied. This doesn't apply. This is what the LCD says. This is what this case is. It doesn't apply. We were going to deny this was for a surgical procedure, and we were getting nothing. So I wrote to a congressional representative. And so, of course, even though I'll get a letter back from the congressional representative, it's their staffers, but they have staff that handle these types of requests. And so that staffer contacts CMS. CMS contacted me. CMS got the name of the carrier, and no PHI is ever involved in this. It's just this is the circumstance. This is the problem. The information exchange only goes direct with the carrier who already has the claim, not with the congressional representative or anything like that. But it just gets attention to the issue. So CMS contacted me. I explained it. They then contacted the carrier. I got a high official from that carrier calling me. He got the information, and he said, we're going to go and audit all of our claims for your group for this procedure code. We're going to reprocess, make sure everything gets paid. Because see, he has to now report back to CMS because they answer to CMS, and CMS answers to the congressional representative. So, and as a matter of fact, when I talked to CMS, if you wonder why this didn't go to CMS, I talked to CMS, that representative, when they called, and I was like, oh, is there a direct line or number, that I can just get you involved with taking my own advice, right? And she said, actually, we are mandated to reply to a congressional inquiry by a certain number of days, or to a patient, a beneficiary, a certain number of days. We have no such mandate for providers. You are lowest on the totem pole. So they actually wanted us to contact, said you'd be better off to contact the congressional representative, because that's who they're going to reply to, because that's what they're mandated to do. They have people in their office that are specific to sit there and answer congressional inquiries.
Wow, just thinking about everything that you said and the short amount of time that we've had today, you've really shared a lot of great ideas and a lot of great tips and strategies for our rev divers. Sharon, thank you so much. This has truly, truly, truly been, I think Taya and we're very passionate about making sure that providers get paid on time. And obviously you are as well, especially for your organization, but you sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sharon.
I enjoyed being here, and I think the world of you guys, and I'm going to get your books next in 2022. That's one of my goals. I know you have a book out on revenue cycle management, so I'm definitely going to get that, because you can never stop learning. You always read, and just like with the legislation, you always read, and then you have to react and then adapt to what's going on. And this is an ever-changing area. So
read, react, and adapt.
Yeah.
Read, react, and adapt.
And I already learned something from you today, Sharon. So thank you so much. And you brought up one of our favorite people for me to learn from also, which is Doral. She's also a powerhouse. So it's phenomenal. I had no idea that providers were at the bottom of the list for responses. How disheartening.
Yeah, that's been a few years ago, several years ago. So it may, well, I don't doubt we're still on the bottom of the list in their eyes, but their policies may have changed a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us. Rev Divers, thanks for joining us today. Until we meet again, Rev Divers, keep digging into those rev cycles.